Author is the 22nd episode of the first season of Frasier, directed by the wonderful James Burrows. And this is a delightful episode for two reasons. One, we get a lot of Frasier and Niles together, which I love. And also, for me as a writer, there are a lot of things that I could unfortunately relate to, a lot of the stresses that they were feeling. But it also gave me a good tip, which I thought was pretty interesting, and I'll talk about that soon. Niles has the opportunity to write a book, and he and Frasier end up agreeing to write this book together, but this book has a really tight deadline. And they decide to write it about siblings, the relationship between siblings, and things don't go according to plan. So there'll be spoilers for this episode from this point onwards, but I won't spoil anything that happens in future episodes or previous episodes either. And the first thing that I rather enjoyed about this was when Niles went on the radio show, and Niles, the way he conducted himself, I just found was very entertaining. The way Frasier responded to that, one of my favourite jokes in the whole episode. And as I said, spoilers for some of the funny things, but it's when I can't remember the exact phrasing, but Frasier said something like he would shave his head for Niles, and Niles said something to the effect of something. It becomes less relevant every single year, and obviously implying that Frasier is becoming more and more bald every year, and it amused me so much. And they realize they have a really tight deadline for this book, so they decide to lock themselves in a hotel room, and I just thought that's a really great thing. For me as a writer, there are times, many times, when I sit down to write and procrastinate because we live in an age where we have so much content right at our fingertips that it's so easy to open up the document and then go and do 1,000 other things. And to be fair, I'd rather wash the dishes than write sometimes. But just the idea of locking yourself in a room and writing with no distractions, especially obviously when this was released and the internet wasn't exactly as appealing as what it is today, and I imagine most hotel rooms didn't have internet access, would have been pretty great. I kind of wish hotels had the option of, no, I don't want Wi-Fi access, so I could utilize this. But the concept of, shutting yourself in a room, going to a space where there are, in theory, no distractions, I really appreciated. It gave me some good food for thought. That's not to say that things go according to Frasier and Niles' plan, though, and the fight sequence was wonderful. It was brilliantly choreographed. Well, I mean, I don't know how much of it was choreographed and how much of it was a case of just go and do your thing. I imagine a lot of it would have been choreographed to help prevent them from getting hurt, because a lot of it was pretty rough, particularly when Frasier was slamming Niles against the wall with him on his back. That's got to hurt. I also don't know exactly what those walls are constructed of, the set designs, but I thought it was very well done. And the bit when Frasier pounced on Niles on the bed, it was funny, but it was uncomfortable as well, because I love both the characters. I don't want to see them fighting or feuding with each other, but it was very well done. And then, of course, it takes quite an emotional turn with Martin's story. I thought it was very moving, and it obviously became quite emotional. And as is always the case with Frasier, the comedic timing was brilliant when things were just getting a little bit too depressing. And then Frasier offered Niles a muffin, which out of context isn't funny, but in the context of the episode really was. And I just thought that the comedic timing there was fabulous. It's a really great episode that obviously looks at siblings and sibling rivalry and how siblings can feel about each other and how they can feel about themselves. Niles gives this really moving speech about how he's always felt second rate simply because Frasier is older. And I think that that's something that I imagine a lot of siblings feel. I'm the eldest sibling, so I can't relate to that specifically, but I feel like that would definitely be the case, particularly if you're very close in age, as Niles and Frasier were, or are. Really enjoyed it. For me, it just spoke to me on so many levels, but it's also very well written, beautifully filmed, very funny, great performances. Author is definitely a pretty fabulous episode.